We are back again here on the Where Eagles Dare podcast. My mic was muted there. My mic was muted there. Boy, it is a it is a Wednesday, isn't it? I am all over the place. Back here on the Where Eagles Dare podcast with Leah and Tubby. I'll get it out now. Glad to be here. Today is a special day. The Eagles don't play until actually Monday night. So they're playing against the Commanders on Monday Night Football. So we are going to cover that tomorrow. We're going to talk all things Eagles about that game. But tonight it's just going to be all about fantasy, kind of go over our results from the previous week. Spoiler alert, mine were again not good, but it is what it is. And then we're going to talk about our predictions and projections for a very tough week in fantasy this week, is because you're getting into week 10. This is where the rubber meets the road if you're going to make the playoffs. I mean, that's already been determined for me. I would need to win out, and it's still, even then, I probably not going to get in. So, but we're here for you all. So if you have any questions or comments, and we'll say this throughout the night, and you need answered as far as your fantasy needs, this is what we're here for. So we will be here for probably around the next hour or so, and as long as people need to ask us questions and information. Real quick before we get into the actual fantasy, I wanted to play a video for Tubby that he might not have seen yet. I have been following and watching this In the Heights podcast for the Kelsey brothers that they do, and they do little clips on TikTok to promote it. It is if you're an Eagles fan, it's something you have to watch. It is hilarious. It's probably next to our podcast, it's my favorite podcast out there. Let's just say that. So this week they talked about the Texans game and the 18 play drive to start the game for the Eagles, their first offensive drive. And it was hilarious. So I'm going to play that clip for us now.
18 play.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely ridiculous. And it was the opening drive. Fans want to hear about it, man.
What do they want to hear about? How exhausted I was. I didn't even celebrate. Kenny scored, or we get in the end zone. I'm like, dude, I'm not celebrating with nobody. I'm going right to the sideline, going to get some of this oxygen and rest these boys up, because I know another drive's coming quick.
They more so want to hear about how you illegally pulled Kenneth Gainwell.
Oh, what are you talking about?
That was an illegal play. You cannot pull a running back.
I didn't pull anybody.
What? You held the man up and yanked him.
He was falling into, I couldn't do anything. He fell.
He fell into your arms? That's going to be your argument?
He fell into my lap, and he was pushing me, and I was just trying to not fall down. Whoa! I didn't pull anybody.
Jason, you're clearly grabbing the man, holding him up.
Erroneous on all counts.
This man, you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, man. You heard it from Jason Kelsey.
Anyway, it's a great podcast. I really highly recommend it. Next hour, as I said, it's my favorite one. So yeah, that was probably awesome. First of all, the 18 play drive was amazing, and Kelsey's take on it's brilliant. But then to hear from the horse's mouth on whether or not he pulled Gainwell into the end zone.
Hey, I love it.
Never admit
fell into me, and I was just holding him. You love it. I mean, and it's good that, it's also so wholesome about that whole thing. I mean, obviously you got two brothers talking to each other, but just the fact that they can still talk about football and clown on each other, like, did you really carry a guy? Nah, man. So that's good, man. Yeah, I haven't really caught their podcast too much, but they obviously have a close relationship, even though they're brothers. They still, obviously always there. Anytime you see one, if one is off, see the other, on a bye week or something like that, man. So that's what's up.
Exactly. And so, that's the one time they get to do it is like once a week when the one day off they have, they do the podcast. Gotcha. But what they say on the podcast, it keeps their relationship together because they don't get to spend a lot of time with each other during the regular season. So it does give them that one day to talk about. You got champagne going tonight? What is that?
Oh shit. Yeah, man. I got a little sorry. Did I do it that casual? I just drink champagne all the time.
What is that?
All right, it's just a Wednesday for me. It's just a Wednesday. It's just a Wednesday. Yes, I drink champagne on Wednesday.
Nice. I was like, just casual. Didn't even mention it. Just tip it back.
Man, Me and the wife are known to celebrate life and pop a bottle
There you go.
whenever we feel like it. And yeah, even on a Wednesday.
What kind is it, by the way?
I actually don't know. Her
Oh,
brother
okay.
sent it for like her birthday or something like that, and we opened it up tonight. But I actually don't know. But it's like some type of
Tastes good.
sparkling wine or something
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, man, it's quenching the thirst for
Cool.
this podcast tonight.
I,
Talking a little fantasy football.
talk about drinking. Friday night's podcast on fantasy football. I started off okay, and when I edited it for the pod, because I wanted to take out the fantasy football stuff, because our podcast listeners
Got you.
don't really need to hear that, especially after the week is over. So I took out the picks and I took out the fantasy and just focused on the recap of the Texans game. And you could tell by the end of that podcast, because we went for like an hour and 40 minutes
Yeah.
on Friday night, because we had a lot of engagement, a lot of people calling, in and asking for help with fantasy.
Mhm.
And by the end, I couldn't even hardly finish a sentence. I was like, good Lord.
Living my best life.
I was, oh, it was Friday was a fun night. I will say that. So
Yeah,
so we had a good time. And the same thing here. So if you have fantasy football questions, feel free to ask it. We're going to get into our picks and predictions here in a second. I did want to mention one thing, because a lot of has been talked about this year with the Eagles being 8-0 about their schedule. And somebody actually did on Twitter today. I saw it. Somebody just got too much time on their hands. They assessed where the Eagles rank among all the other 8-0 teams in the history of the NFL. I think there have been 29 8-0 teams that have started 8-0, and where they rank as far as their strength of schedule. One of the weakest schedules in the history of teams going 8-0 is none other than the Miami Dolphins of 1972 that led the undefeated season. And nobody ever questions their schedule or talks about it. But if you look at their opponents, they didn't play a team over 500 for a long stretch in those, and they only played 12 games, of course, back then. I think it was 12 regular season games, maybe 14. I can't remember. But anyway, the Eagles, out of all these teams, and of course the Patriots, they were on par with the Patriots' undefeated season just a few years ago as far as their schedule. In fact, the Eagles' schedule is stronger at this point by the teams that they've played than the Patriots were at 8-0 when they ended up going undefeated. So the Eagles rank 14th out of all the 29 teams. Their schedule is 14th. So mid pack of all the teams that have gone 8-0 to start a season. So again, it is just haters and the media that want to pump up a false narrative about this team. I
Right.
pointed out to somebody the other day, you want to talk about haters. The Eagles are 8-0. There are 4, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in the NFC. Not talking the AFC. The Eagles don't play in the AFC. There are 4 teams in the AFC, or the NFC, sorry, that are over 500. 4. That's it.
Damn.
Besides the Eagles, you have the Vikings,
Mhm.
you have the Cowboys, you have the Giants, and the Seattle Seahawks, believe it or not, are the
Man.
only four teams over 500 other than the Eagles. Eagles beaten 2 of the 4 teams that are over 500 in the NFC. So again, we could say all we want. We could talk about it over and over again about the Eagles schedule, but this meme came up. You sent this to me earlier, and I thought it was hilarious. This is what Eagles want their schedule. People want the Eagles schedule to look like in order to give them any type of respect. They want Chiefs, Bills, Dolphins, Cowboys with Dak, God, Thanos, the U.S. Navy SEALs, then a bye, then the Bills, and then the Chiefs again, the entire Wakandan army, God with the 85 Bears defense, an army of Derrick Henrys and Vikings, but not in prime time. Not in prime time. So it
Yeah, you
is,
gotta be specific there.
and that's what you get with the haters.
Yeah, man.
Even some of our own fans who have disavowed the schedule. I'm like, look, I watched the teams that we played, and I watch how they play other teams. You look at Detroit beating Green Bay this weekend, that easily could have happened to the Eagles. You look at Jacksonville getting their upset this weekend, easily could have happened to the Eagles, but it didn't. Eagles won those games, even though people want to call them as weak. It is what it is. But we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Anybody can look at a schedule and say it doesn't have anything on it if they hate their opponent. enough needs to be said about that. We move on. We've got, I think what they said that when all is said and done, the Eagles will have the 12th strongest strength of schedule by the end of the season based on current records. Because in the second half of the season, we got to play Dallas again. We got to play the Giants twice. We have to play Green Bay down. We got to play Tennessee, who's up this year. So there are a lot of teams on the schedule that that could pose a problem for the Eagles. So we're not talking undefeated on this podcast. We have never uttered those words in connection with the Philadelphia Eagles, but we are talking about legitimate 8-0 teams, and the Eagles are. So get over it.
You know what I love?
Yeah,
is that when I see all the commentary during the week of guys with flow charts, spreadsheets on.
Oh yeah.
When will the Eagles lose? I mean, it's like the 2016 election. People are like, wait a minute, what's going on? What's going on? And it's kind of like they had it up there like an election board. Maybe when they play the Titans. Ooh, I don't know about the Titans. It's just like y'all burning all of y'all energy on when the Eagles are going to lose.
Right.
Not the whole flowery. If this was Green Bay, you wouldn't even be seeing a flow chart, a spreadsheet on when the Eagles, on when the Packers might lose. If the Bills was undefeated, Kansas City were undefeated.
Dallas.
Don't even.
No, yeah.
It's hard to even, it would be hard to even imagine a world where if Dallas Cowboys were 8-0, they wouldn't have spreadsheets and flow charts on when Dallas is going to lose.
Hell no.
That just shows, when you look at the media, just the media's approach to, they don't really care if you like your team. They just care about those numbers and those ratings. They know a lot of Niners fans, a lot of Cowboys fans, a lot of Lakers. Yeah. They stick with those provocative stories. They aren't really reporting on sports and they aren't really just reporting on football and what's happening. They're reporting on the sexy things, the provocative things, because other than that, nobody just likes the truth all the time. They'll just click away. Give me something I can argue about. Give me a one of those headlines, that I can combat you on. Let's do a lot of hyperbolic. Let's have a whole hyperbolic conversation just to kind of stir up the pot a little bit. And when I look on TV, it's not how well the Eagles are playing. It's when are they going to lose their first game.
Exactly.
So it just shows the different dynamics. When the media loves you, you can do no wrong. And you see that a lot in sports.
We're no stranger to this. This is the second time the Eagles, other than, talk about the early 2000s, when we had McNabb, it wasn't as bad, but we were never really favored. People didn't want us there. But in 2017, it was total disrespect by the media the whole season. Everybody said, well, they're going to lose in the first round with Foles, and then we win against Atlanta. Well, they can't beat Minnesota, and it just goes on and on. That's the one thing I hear from people who regurgitate ESPN. They go, well, the Eagles will be one and done in the playoffs. Right. Dude, I'm so glad it's not up to you. I'm so glad it's up to them and not up to these so-called fans that all they do is regurgitate what ESPN tells them. Right. Instead of actually watching games, I can watch games and do picks and make picks based on what I see. Like this past weekend, and not to toot my own horn, I did really well in picks, picked a lot of underdogs because it's getting to that point of the season where you can kind of cut the wheat from the chaff, and it's just my opinion. But I would never tell a team that they're going to be one and done in the playoffs that's 8-0. I would never say that. Even when the Steelers started off with like 10-0, 11-0, I never would discount that. You see what happens when it gets there. Yes, the Steelers struggled a lot that year. They had weak opponents. This isn't the same thing.
Right.
The Eagles have, if you look at the Steelers team that started off 10-0, 11-0, whatever it was, they struggled with a lot of teams, and they weren't leading the league in category. People were shocked when they just kept pulling these wins out of their butt. The Eagles lead the league in several offensive and defensive rankings. So we could talk about it all day, but it's just crazy.
Now those are really good points, because it kind of that's just where we're at. The Eagles have not only won their games, but they beat all their teams, but they beat the bad teams. They with exception of like Detroit, but that's week 1. Week
Yeah.
1 is always going to be crazy, but we've handled business. We didn't, skip through games or kind of hobble through games as much. Like you said, when you bring up the stats on the Eagles, offense or defense, we're right there with everybody else or better. Top 5, top 3, with everybody else. Last year we were running the ball well. It was like, oh, well, you can't pass. But now we're in like both of those categories, both of those conversations, and then total offense. Total offense. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Is how much did your team matriculate the ball down the field? Like at the end of the day, like that's the point
Right.
of playing football. And the Eagles have done that really well. It's a ton of games, man. 9 games left. I mean, anything can happen. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
it's 9 games. Even though we're 8-0, we still have all of that to go again, plus a game.
The wheels could fall off. Definitely. We don't know what the future holds.
Right.
We know that this team, though, is talented. They're being coached well on both sides of the ball. I will be the first to admit Gannon's doing a good job. Not great. Could do better. But they're being coached well, and they have stars that can perform. Like you said, a lot. I couldn't get over. I'm watching every Eagle game, yet by the 4th week of the season, people kept talking about how the Eagles are predominantly a running team. I'm like, are you watching the games, bro? Hurts is throwing his mind out, and now they're finally getting around to the fact, AJ Brown has 760 yards receiving. By the way, past Jalen Reagor on the all-time Eagles receiving list in one half a season.
Yeah.
But he's done this, and then they showed the Titans who he's exceeding their entire team in receiving yards. So oops for the Titans to do that. But it is, it is what it is. Now they're starting to realize that AJ is key, Devontae is key. And I don't want to get into Washington too much, but that's what we're going to rely on Monday night again. It's not all about the run. They're not a one-dimensional team anymore, and people need to get over it. They're much better than you're giving them credit for.
They're just winning however they can win.
Right.
If you're going to give us the pass, we'll take the pass. If you're going to give us the run, we'll take the run. If we can win a defensive game and have a solid offensive game, we're going to do all of the above. The key points are Jalen isn't turning the ball over, and that's one of the key factors. You can have a 3-and-out. 3-and-outs happen, or you can punt. Punts are normal, but turning that ball over and giving up field position, that's what we haven't done a lot this year. And I think that's part of the reason why those mistakes, mistakes, you lessen your mistakes, man, and everything else just seems to kind of work out. So as part of it is playing mistake-free football. You're going to get tackled. You're going to get stopped. You're going to get stopped. All those things are normal. Like you may go a half and not score. All those things are still normal in football, but you don't turn the ball over and you're keeping yourself in the game. And that's what the Eagles have done this year. And that's what good teams do. We've proven last year that we can beat the mediocre to bad teams. This year that we're just proving that we can just win whoever's on our schedule right now. So we'll keep it going. Yeah, man. Well, nobody's saying 17-0, but the energy is definitely out there for like when can the Eagles lose so we can get back to talking about the Bills. And while we're on that, I was thinking to myself, like, man, the Bills losing to the Jets kills every narrative that everybody tried to push blindly as to why the Bills were the best team in football. And I'm not saying that they didn't deserve the attention that they were receiving, but it's the definitiveness. When you have an undefeated team, when you have a team that you see is playing well on both sides of the ball, they were just definitive, even with the one-loss Bills, that they were the best. And then you go out and lose to the Jets, and it's like you hear, it's like radio silence. It's crazy how the media can just do what they want. They can turn it up as high as they want. They can turn it down to a minuscule as much as they want. Now you don't see anything about Buffalo this week. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, just nothing about Buffalo, just kind of la-di-da, Josh Allen. He has an elbow injury. That doesn't make up for those 2 bad picks, bro. Like,
what's even more ridiculous is instead of the Bills, what we've been getting a lot of is the Chiefs passed them in the power rankings. So now the Chiefs are sitting there at number 2 in most power rankings. And so now they're back on the Chiefs bandwagon, even though the Bills beat the Chiefs and pretty convincingly. it was a close game, but the Bills controlled that game because
Right.
they needed to after the playoffs last year. And so now they're back on the Chiefs bandwagon, and the Chiefs could barely get by a Tennessee team that had a quarterback who threw 10 passes, completed 7 of them for 60 some yards,
Oh, Lord.
did not have a single reception by a wide receiver, and the Chiefs got taken to overtime by this team, but yet the media thinks the Chiefs are better than the Eagles. I was in a Facebook war with a Chiefs fan this weekend, and he just said, dude, if you could tell me the Chiefs are better than the Eagles, you're probably smoking something. You're nothing but a homer, blah, blah, blah. As soon as that Chiefs game was over with Tennessee, I went, what's up, dude? Getting taken to overtime by because he had to point out, well, you only beat Dallas because they had a backup quarterback. I went, dude, get taken to overtime by a backup quarterback that doesn't even throw but 7 completions. Boy, you guys are really bad. Because his argument was the Eagles can't beat the Bills or the Chiefs. I am so glad, again, like I said before, that it's not up to them. Because in 2017, all we heard, can't beat the Falcons, can't beat the Vikings,
Right.
can't beat the Patriots.
Right.
Boom, 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 done, did it. It's not up to the media. It's not up to the fans on Facebook. It's up to the players on the field. You can have an opinion that the Eagles can't beat the Chiefs. You can have an opinion that the Eagles can't beat the Bills, but you damn sure better not tell me that I can think otherwise or that I'm stupid for thinking otherwise just because that's what you believe. People in this day and age, this social media nonsense, make these inane statements like they're gospel. And it's like, do you even watch football, bro?
Right.
Do you even watch football to see a 1-7 team like the Tennessee Titans nearly beat the Chiefs? And I tell you what, had friggin' Vrabel had half a brain when they were on the 40-yard line late in the game, in field goal range or getting to it, and you let Malik Willis throw 3 passes? What are you doing, bro? And then he gets sacked and takes him out of field goal range. That field goal, had Vrabel just run King Henry like he should have, like everybody in the world knew you should have, they would have been in field goal range. They would have kicked a field goal, and then it wouldn't have mattered what the Chiefs did.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way because Vrabel, I hope he plays that crappy when the Eagles get to play the Titans. That's all I say. I hope they play that crappy.
I must admit, I didn't watch any of that. And man, I guess this kind of segues right into the fantasy football week.
Let's look at it. Yeah.
Why I could not watch the game anymore. We might as well just start with mine, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it. Well, it doesn't matter. Mine don't matter anymore. By the way, I do want to preface, if you're tuning into the live stream and you have fantasy questions, this is your time. We're more than happy to take questions and on projections, especially waiver wire stuff or anything coming up, getting into your week 10 matchups. But with that being said, I'm turning over to Tubby to talk about his day.
So I went up and I was watching football at my buddy's house, Outcast. He's in our league as well. And I'm sitting there, and I see, Bengals are playing. Oh, look at that. Okay. And I see Devontae Adams doing his thing. And I'm like, oh, Devontae Adams is balling. And every time they cut back to a commercial break, I see Mixon, touchdown. And I'm like, what? Because we had the game up. We had the game up on the he doesn't have direct TV or the red zone. So we had just like the local game that was up on the and then I had my tablet and I had the red zone on my tablet.
Gotcha.
And I have, you see, I'm starting DJ Moore on my lineup. So I'm sitting there like, man, why isn't DJ Moore even getting any targets? And it's like every time I turned around, the Bengals had the football. Like it was just the most insane half to watch, man. And lo and behold, man, Mixon has 4 touchdowns at the half. I'm devastated at this point because he already has Jalen Hurts, who got him 34. Now I have in Patrick we trust, but he hadn't played yet. And these is points on the board. This is 34 solid points from Hurts in the vault. 15 from Sanders. I'm struggling with my running backs, as you can see. Got
Right.
Carter and Montgomery. Both those guys are splitting time and just in weird situations. And I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to get. So to see Mixon score that 5th touchdown, even when they came out, I was like, you know what? Just not your week, man. Just not your week. And I'm sitting next to Outcast, who my brother, I don't know if you remember, my brother had Alvin Kamara on Christmas.
Right.
The championship game, and Kamara scored 6 touchdowns on him. For in the championship game, Josh Allen had a good day that day as well. But, all hope was like lost for me, bro. Like, so I was like, you know what? I mean, if you can see how many points they got, I was down like 50 or something like that. And I'm like, Mahomes comes out and gets me like 20 in like the first quarter. And I go, man, I can't even watch this because Juju not getting the ball. I'm like, man, I'm going to just lose. Let me just turn it off because I just don't want to watch this game, with my fantasy hopes on the line. So I'm watching the new season of Amazing Race. Put it on. You recommended one with I think it's the latest one with Rex Ryan on it.
Right.
I put it on Paramount. I start watching and I pull up my phone. I look at ESPN. I go, put it back down. And I pull up my phone again, look at the fantasy, and I go, and get my percentages just keep getting higher. But what I didn't know, man, and then I just put my phone down. And then I saw that the game went into overtime. But what I didn't know is that it took overtime. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes passes to Juju Smith in overtime.
Yep.
In order for me to win this game. And if you are A. Will, who's our defending champion with Mixon, you have to be absolutely sick.
Right.
To have a what's that? About 75-point performance from 2 players. Oh, I feel it, man. I feel it. I didn't feel bad for him because I've had bad losses. I lost T. Higgins' 41-yard touchdown last week. I'm damn sure not going to cry for anyone that I beat when I just took that L. So, man, it was just a crazy weekend. And Patrick, this is why I draft Patrick Mahomes, man, because he can make up for the David Montgomerys, the DJ Moores when they're in weird situations, and the Kyle Pitts. He can just make up for things, man. Still had an incredible week, A. Will. I mean, good team. You see that squad? Hopkins, Diggs, Mixon, Sanders. Luckily, Dobbs for Green Bay went out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I had a lot of help this week. But no, Patty Mahomes, man, really brought it home for me. And Suckup had a surprising 12 points from your kicker, man. So, pretty good week, man. Nail biter. This is fantasy. I thought I had lost. You couldn't tell me that I was coming back. And, man, them's the breaks. So, Patrick we trust. Oh my God.
Exactly. Yeah, I was again, I lost by 0.6 last week, so yeah, I don't have any sympathy for Will losing, and it's been that kind of year for me. This week I was dealing with some bye stuff. I had Kittle on a bye. I had Everett as a backup tight end, but I took a chance on Brevin Jordan, and he only got me 1.5 points, and Everett actually had 8.6. So had I just stuck to my guns and put Everett in tight end, I would have won by 2 points. But, you try to take chances in fantasy to compensate, and I was going with matchups, and Everett really hadn't done much. I thought Brevin would get me at least 6 to 7 points, because you just never know. So I had average scores across the board. Jones, again, here's my thing about Jones for people that want to know about how I feel about Aaron Jones. He is so inconsistent, and it's not his fault. Jones is facing 2 problems in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers has to be the hero. It's one of the reasons they're failing right now. They have 2 decent running backs in Jones and Dillon, and he refuses to hand off the ball consistently. Right. When they get near the goal line, it always has to be a pass. It very rarely is letting the running back take it in. Rodgers has to get those TD passes, baby. He has to get those. So Jones is like a big negative to have. And another thing is the coaching staff cannot seem to decide whether they want Jones as their every down back or to be the backup to Dillon. because it switches, seems like every week. One week, Jones will have 26 points, and the next week he has 6 against a team like Detroit where he should have racked up some major points. But Green Bay overall lost the game to Detroit because of coaching and letting Aaron Rodgers try to be the constant hero. And the problem with Aaron Rodgers right now trying to be the hero, he has no horses, especially when Dobbs went out. He has not a single guy. If you watch their receivers, they're like the Eagles were 2 years ago, or even you can even say last year if you take Devontae Smith out, when we just had J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Rager, and a bunch of guys that can't get any separation. And that's what Aaron Rodgers has right now. He has a bunch of receivers that he's throwing into traffic every single down. So it really, he needs more than ever to rely on his running game, but he refuses to do it. And that's why the ship is sinking, is basically in a nutshell. And I hope they're playing the same way when the Eagles play him. So, yeah, so I had a rough week. It is what it is. I mean, I've kind of started writing the season off after the 0.6 points. I'm still trying. I don't ever give up in fantasy.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't a lot of fun for me.
The crazy thing about, so you lost by 0.6 this week to Outcast.
Last week. Yeah.
Last week to Outcast, right? Outcast turns around and you see he loses 110 to 109 this week. And so he lost by 1.6. He won by 0.6 last week and he lost by 1.6 this week. And you know what did it to him?
What's that?
The Taysom Hill first down pass. The one thing Taysom Hill did in that entire game against New Orleans. That's how Outcast lost this week. That it literally, because he only had Taysom Hill left and Outcast was still up. That's why I bring it all down to Taysom Hill.
Crazy.
Taysom did just about nothing. And he completed that pass for a first down. It gave him that 2.12. And that was he needed anything from Hill, really just a 5-yard, 6-yard run. But Hill was getting him nothing.
That's crazy.
And then 1 13-yard pass and 6 yards rushing is what from Taysom Hill is what got him over the top, man. So this league is just bananas, man.
Yeah. And again, going back to mine, I was leading pretty decent going into the Monday night game. And Derrick Henry, you know he's going to get points. Mm-hmm. But the thing that was crazy was, Derrick Henry does his thing, gets 2 touchdowns, 23 points, but the Tennessee didn't ride him. I forget how many carries he had, but he didn't have near enough. And I don't know, you've got this unproven quarterback and your receiving core is trash, and yet you're just not running the ball every day. I don't get why you don't run. I was watching them do what the Eagles do. Henry's killing it. Yank him, put in backup running back. And I'm like, he's barely carried it 3 times.
Right.
And especially when you're close to field goal range, giving the ball to Henry. So Henry should have had a lot more than 23 because I had already written myself off as a loss when the game started. And I was surprised by the fourth quarter. I was still up by 2-3 points. So it is what it is. And we move on to the next week. And we've got our first question of the night.
Oh, my bad.
No, you got it. Should I trade Aaron Jones and Jacoby Myers for JT? Full PPR redraft. Interesting. If you just tuned in, you probably may not have heard me go off on Aaron Jones. I am not a big Aaron Jones fan, and if you have him, Sebastian, you probably feel my pain. Is that it doesn't seem like the Green Bay knows what to do with him because they keep swapping him and Dillon out, and 2, Rodgers always has to be the hero. So the only time Jones is getting a touchdown is when Rodgers is passing it to him out of the backfield because they rarely give it to their backs to just punch it in. It could be on the 1-yard line. Watch Green Bay games. It could be on the 1-yard line, just a punch in, and Aaron Rodgers is always going to throw to try to get those passing TDs. So I'm not high on Aaron Jones. So I think if somebody is offering that for JT, it's tough for JT because they've got a new coach now. Frank Reich is gone. And you've got a Erlinger at quarterback who was unproven and really didn't look good in his first game. And yeah, Sebastian says, yeah, I get it. Aaron Jones is frustrating and has a lot to do with Aaron Rodgers. So for JT, I would, this is my opinion, I would go for it just because I think with Jeff Saturday coming in as head coach, I think you might see a rededication to trying to get Taylor's numbers up. You may see you're going to see a simplified offense is what you're going to see. So you're going to see more carries, a straight up run. So who knows what that could lead to? What do you think, Tubby, on this one? Do you think
So
Myers is worth it?
Myers has been inconsistent. It's kind of like
Mhm.
when Devontae Adams is out, Jacoby gets more play, and then when Zappy is in, Jacoby gets more play. It can get a little weird there with Jacoby Myers. Definitely inconsistent, but when he's in, he can put up some points. But to consolidate that, especially heading into the playoffs, I don't know where you're sitting at, Sebastian, in your league, but heading into the playoffs, JT has still gotten the carry. So you start off the year 31 attempts, right? Then 9 attempts, but no problem. But then 20, 21, and then he has the injuries, right? Then they slowly bring him back with 10 carries, and then he had 16 carries last week. He just didn't really get it together. But if Jonathan Taylor touching the ball 16 times, I'm with that. Now I know, here was the crazy thing. So last week, to answer your question, I would definitely make this trade because of how bad. Yeah, man. If you need to go on the flyer and go on the win, absolutely, man. I would take I would take it, man, because you still have Dylan back there, and Dylan's always vulturing touchdowns and stuff like that. Taylor's going to have the ball.
Yep.
Jonathan Taylor's goal line situation, and Lee made probably one of the biggest points is that new coach. And Jeff Saturday, he's a lineman too. Linemen love to run the ball. So he may just to get his feet settled, he may just go ahead and run the ball, just straight up. So the only problem with Taylor is he's missed a few games. His third game he's missed this year. So he didn't play last week against New England. That's the only thing, man, that could be a little frustrating because Lease Jones is available. So, man, ETM, man. Yeah, and you're right. You will have 2 solid RB1s, and you'll go ahead. And then I have Jefferson and Amon St. Brown. So, yeah, man, son, you have a solid squad. If you have maybe another RB3 or RB2 that you also have, to kind of back up when Taylor's not there, because you're giving up a healthy Jones and a healthy Myers for an up and down type of player as far as the injuries goes. But man, going into the playoffs and needing a good sprint, if somebody's offering you that trade, Sebastian, I would take that trade.
Yeah, if you're throwing up a Hail Mary, then that's the best guy you want to Hail Mary to is JT. So yeah, there are risks involved in anything. There's a reason you're getting offered this, but because it may help your opponent out too. But I think that if it's a Hail Mary and you need it, go for it. All right, another question, and Sebastian just following up. Jamal Williams is his flex running back. So he's okay with ATN and Williams right now because Swift could go back down again. So let's look at Jim 896 question. He says full PPR need to sit one. We got DJ Moore, Lazard, Christian Kirk, and Jerry Jeudy. All right. So you're familiar with Moore. You've got Moore on your team. The Panthers are playing at home against the Falcons, which they had the last time these two teams played. Holy crap. They burned the house down. That was a crazy game. That was the game. Didn't Moore whip off his helmet?
Yeah.
And get the penalty and then put him out of field goal range, and then they missed the extra point.
Yeah, missed the extra point and then missed a chip shot even in overtime. So
so
Pereiro, anyway, I forgot his name, but Perennial, something like that.
Yeah,
he didn't do that well of a job, man. Full PPR need to sit one. DJ Moore, Alan Lazard, Christian Kirk, and Jerry Jeudy.
And you have Kirk too, right?
I have Kirk, and I have DJ Moore. So let me tell you what my ranking system is right now. It's Christian Kirk out of these guys would be my number one guy just because of the volume that he gets. He gets a lot of volume in that offense. So I'm definitely going to sit. I would probably go ahead and sit DJ Moore. I know he's going against Atlanta this week, and he had a good game against Atlanta before, but I think I'm going to go ahead and sit DJ Moore because Jerry Jeudy is about all they have to go to besides Cortland Sutton. So probably going to go ahead and sit DJ Moore, man. It's unpopular, but that quarterback situation is such a carousel in Carolina. So probably Alan Lazard, but that's also all all Rodgers has. So I'm just going with quarterbacks, just thinking maybe Allen Lazard. He scored a touchdown last week. So yeah, man, I would sit DJ Moore. And I would definitely start Daniel Jones, just because Trevor Lawrence isn't throwing the ball that much.
Right.
You know, they've been like up and down. If they're down, they'll throw it a lot, but he hasn't threw the ball that much. So probably go with Daniel Jones to start.
I would definitely do Daniel Jones only because they're playing the Texans. And if you watch the Eagles Texans last week, they've got decent corners. They've got guys that can play but the Eagles kind of in the second half kind of had their way with them. And Jacksonville has Kansas City on the road. I don't think Trevor Lawrence in that stadium is gonna thrive. Back to your other question, I'm just gonna give you my I don't want to confuse you, but I would probably sit Lazard, my opinion, because Rodgers to me is struggling, and they're playing the Cowboys defense, which I think will throw even more of a wrench into the system. But so I would roll with Moore because I think Moore has something to prove after the Atlanta game. That's kind of why I threw that out there. Kirk may struggle in the Kansas City game because as Lawrence goes, he goes. But I would probably lean toward Lazard only because of facing the Dallas defense.
Yeah.
But I'm not the one who, with Tubby's record, I've only won 2 games on the season. So
it's weird, man. It's so weird because they're such a toss up. But DJ Moore, man, at times has had some pretty disappointing games this year. Yeah. So with that said, I'm just trying to go with the guys that I know probably going to be throwing the ball. And I think
it's a good point.
But that Dallas is the best point because that's probably one of the better points, because they're going to bring it, man.
And you also have to go with who's throwing the ball to DJ Moore. That makes a difference. But I thought
who that's going to be. It could be Baker Mayfield at halftime. It could be, PJ Walker.
Right.
Man, I just know watching that Bengals game made me so disappointed in Carolina's offense, how they just could not do anything and just kept giving the ball back. So that may be too personal. Because that's what led Mixon doesn't get all those touchdowns if the Panthers hold the ball at all. It's like they just kept getting the ball back, and then it's like
that was wrong. Yeah, that was their worst performance with Walker. I was surprised. I took the under on that one. I took Carolina to cover the spread because I really thought they'd stay with them after Cleveland had their way with Cincy. But that's the kind of way the NFL works.
Right.
Is that you get humiliated by the Browns, you come out and your running back scores 5 touchdowns. So you got to really watch what did they do last week? Are they a good team? And are they going to come out with a chip on your shoulder? That's why I always say when we're playing with the Eagles, I always prefer playing a team coming off a win than I prefer a team coming off a loss. I really hoped Washington was going to win last week, and they almost did, because I wanted to face them on a high, coming off of 4 straight wins, thinking they're unbeatable. Now they got their heads down, and they're going to fight the Eagles, but we'll talk about Washington tomorrow. Let's get back into fantasy. So if you guys, if you got any more fantasy questions, we are here for at least another 15-20 minutes. So feel free to ask them. We will break in. Right now we're just going over our fantasy lineups for this week and just kind of showing the logic behind our picks. I'll go real quick with mine. I've got Burrow on a bye. So right now I got Stafford in there. I just got the word that he's in the concussion protocol. So right after I pick him up to go up against Arizona, I figured at least that's a good 30 points. He's in the concussion protocol. So I may have to try to find an alternative. I've got a few things up my sleeve. There's guys on the waiver wire to be had. I may go with Garoppolo, something like that, just to fill the gap while Burrow is out. But Burrow really has had one really big week for me, and he's one of the real reasons why my team has been struggling is that I really counted on Burrow to have a much better season than he did. And to be the field general of my fantasy team, it's really not worked out. What has worked out is Claypool in Chicago now with a different quarterback, and Justin Fields is coming out of nowhere, going nuts with the football. So I got Claypool, and Debo is now back. He went from questionable to healthy today. So that's big news. And I've loved my running backs. Dalvin's up and down, but Josh Jacobs, that's one of the things that sucked for me last week. Jacobs and Cook both had down weeks. When they both have down weeks, it sucks. I expect them to both bounce back this week. I've got Jacobs against Indy and Cook against Buffalo at Buffalo, but I'm hoping that weather, and because it's supposed to be really cold, leads them to have to grind things out on the ground and being one of those games where Cook can get me some runs. Kittle's back at tight end for me. Aaron Jones, I've got no one else. I've got a couple of alternatives at running back. I've got Latavius Murray. I got Kyren Williams, who's still on IR, that I'm waiting to come back and play for the Rams. But other than that, Jones is my best bet at flex. It really is. That's all I got. Even against Dallas, I've got to roll with them and hope that he has a good game. Let's it kicker, and of course Buffalo defense playing at home against Minnesota. Hopefully they have a good game. We'll see. And that's what I'm rolling with this week. Now, in your end, you've got the same old solid lineup.
Yeah, man. And Patrick, we trust as always. Then Juju's come along. He worked this, started the season real slow. I dropped Juju, I think twice earlier in this season, and somebody else dropped him, and then I picked him up, and then I dropped him, and then I picked him back up. And I started him that week against the Raiders, and I haven't let him out since because he's starting to at least get, 8 to 10 targets from Mahomes. It started out real slow last game, but once Juju got going, that whole offense got going. So I'm just hoping that that still compares, man. But Tony, I thought Tony was going to cut into a little bit more of Juju's touches, but as far as right now, not so much. But I mean, Devontae Adams speaks for itself. You see the week he had last week. So Saquon's back off the bye. Houston has a favorable matchup, for me.
Yep.
So I hope Saquon really does his thing, man. And also Montgomery finally has a favorable matchup, which is against Detroit, division game. I hope they run the ball. I hope Hubert doesn't vulture any touchdowns. I got Kyle Pitts in this week, but I tell you what, man, Njoku, I'm really thinking about starting him, but they play on Thursday and he's coming off an injury. So I'm like, man, I'm going to give it one more week. So I'm going to stick with Kyle Pitts. At least he scored against Carolina last time he played, which was like 2 weeks ago, I think. And then, yeah, man, Ryan Suckup, Tampa has been able to move the ball, but they still have been settling for a lot of field goals. So Suckup has been doing a good job for me this year. And, man, that Dallas defense, man, I expect them to really, really get after Rodgers this week. I think they smell blood, wounded. Rodgers like a little wounded animal out there, man. But Rodgers just doesn't have the receivers, man. And any quarterback that doesn't have the receivers, they're going to take a dip. And you could look great 1 point. You could still win without great receivers, but you don't look the same. Kind of like look at the Chargers with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams now. It's like you don't even hear Justin Herbert's name, even though they're 5-3. The Chargers are 5-3, but you notice that you don't even hear it. It's rookie of the year, and a lot of hype coming into this season. But when you lose 2 studs, you have to do some things different because they make special plays.
Right.
Now you're just throwing it to Joe Blows, and you got to make perfect throws when you're throwing it to Joe Blows, man. And that's the biggest difference. And that's the biggest difference in Jalen Hurts. This year, he has that guy. He didn't have that guy before. So when you have that guy, you see the difference. And when Keenan Allen gets back, I expect the Chargers to make a late push out of nowhere. Nobody's really paying attention to him. But because they lost to Jacksonville, it was like a really bad loss for them. But overall, when they get their guns back, man, Allen's coming back, Williams coming back, you have the receivers out there. But anyway, yeah, man, I just expect I think Dallas should be able to handle Green Bay.
I do. I think the only
matchup there.
The only thing about that matchup that Green Bay has going for them is playing at home and not playing in Dallas with the Dallas officials, because that's always a big thing. But Dallas is better regardless of where they're playing this game. It's that whole thing again where they just got humiliated by Detroit, by a division rival. Do the Packers circle the wagons and Rodgers comes up with this amazing game and they go off at home? It is possible. I would put it down in the 20% possible.
Yeah.
The odds are that that the Cowboys will win this game by a couple touchdowns fairly easily, and on the backs of their defense and their running game. So
Detroit scored a little bit. Remember Detroit? Detroit probably could have won that game against Dallas in Dak's first game back when Jamal Williams fumbles at the goal line. Williams doesn't. They made a ton of mistakes, Detroit.
They did.
That
They
game.
they blew that game.
Ton of
They
mistakes.
they did have some bad officiating in Dallas.
True.
The tight end did go out of bounds at the half-yard line, and then Williams fumbled. But that game was 6-3. Detroit late in the third quarter when the Dallas scored to make it 10-6. Now they think the final score was like 27-13. Don't quote me on that. But those points all came in garbage time.
Right.
It was 10-6 and then like 13-6 for a while. Then the Cowboys got 2 late touchdowns to win 27-13. So, I just Dallas is a great defensive team. There's no arguing that. But they make mistakes on offense. They are not the offense they were last year.
Right.
And if anybody thinks they are, even with Dak at this point, they're kidding themselves. So anything can happen. They double cover CD Lamb and shut down the running game. Who knows? But my money's on Dallas in that game.
Yeah.
The other thing you said that I thought was interesting was, you got Montgomery in Chicago. Isn't it odd that Chicago goes on a fire sale and gets rid of Quinn to us, and then the linebacker Roquan Smith, and yet now Fields is all of a sudden coming into his own? Do you kind of think they wish they had those guys back because of the way they're playing the last couple of weeks?
Well,
Even in a loss, again, that game against Miami, they gave them everything they could handle. I loved did you see the clip of Mike McDaniel yelling at Justin Fields on the sideline? Stop it. Stop it. They asked him what he said. He goes,
stop.
He wouldn't listen to the coaching. That was
hilarious.
That was brilliant. But
I didn't watch a lot of Ohio State games when what's his name? We were just talking about him. Fields was there. I did watch, I think it was like the Alabama game. I think it was. I don't know if that was a national championship game or the game before that. Anyway, but I forgot how fast Fields was. Like his acceleration, I was like, he like Michael Vick out there. I mean, he really did at times. He like a bigger Michael Vick. And I was like, holy shit, man. The Bears are a weird team because they have a lot of pieces. Now, we're getting rid of Quinn. I understand why, because Quinn was the oldest on the defense.
Yep.
So and
he was free agent.
Right. That's like, we can get rid of him. Roquan Smith, I was a little, I thought that was a little crazy because, I thought he still had a lot left in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was pretty crazy. But they have a young core there. Maybe they're just going to rebuild and go with that. But Fields, man, I think if he can get his touchdown with his throws, because he still holds the ball longer than any quarterback in the NFL. So it's not like he's getting rid of it fast. And obviously the line doesn't seem like it's on him that quick to be able to hold the ball longer than anyone in the league. But man, when he finally really gets his feet under him, not running, I don't mean running, when he finally gets comfortable in a system where, year after year, man, he could be extremely dangerous. He looked really dangerous. But I mean, look at the comeback against New England, though.
Yep.
I mean, that was prime time. What was that, Monday Night Football? So we see those glimpses. And I'll say this about young quarterbacks. How good was Aaron Rodgers in this rookie year?
Oh, exactly.
He didn't play. How good was Aaron Rodgers in his second year?
Yeah.
He didn't play.
Yeah.
How good was Aaron Rodgers in his third year? He didn't play. So, you could look at Brady's the same way. These guys, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit of a tangent, my bad. Yeah. It's just like the guys that you see doing really well. Even if we go back to Michael Vick, he didn't even start when he first got in the league. Man, it was a lot of quarterbacks. Brett Favre didn't even start.
We're old school enough to know that in the day you drafted a quarterback and you already had an established starter, the Steve Young to Joe Montana, and you just let the guy sit and watch the starter. This was going to be the heir apparent. Now we're in these days of win now, so you see these draft picks and you salivate over them, and we rush these guys into the lineup.
Yeah,
thank God we did it with Hurts, but thank God they did it the way they did. Is that They gave Wentz the job, but then they kind of, the season was already over with Hurts, to go out there and feed him to the wolves, let him get his legs wet, so that when he came back out last year, he had a little enough experience to lead the team through a whole season.
Right.
And now
Exactly.
you get into that third year, and he hit its stride. And what cracks me up is people act like it's a surprise that he's all of a sudden better.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
man. Most quarterbacks do it. Most quarterbacks do it.
It's
Josh
his
Allen,
second.
they try to write off Josh Allen his rookie year. He had a really bad rookie year. Until he gets, hey, I guess it goes back to proves my point. Up until he got Diggs.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real. And man, that dog, that number one receiver, when he got Diggs is what the biggest separate, because he was out there with Zay Jones and a couple other guys. But when Stephon Diggs came out there, all of a sudden, boom, because they don't have any run game. It's all Allen and Diggs. So having that, you can have a good quarterback, but you still got to put pieces around them. And Josh Allen caught his footing his third year.
Yep.
This first year, it was like, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks. And, you got to go through those growing pains. But that's the biggest point. It's such a microwave society in general.
Yeah.
It's when it's when right now, week to week, like I said, man, most of the quarterbacks, your favorite quarterback sat the bench when he started in the league. Tom Brady, right? Yeah. He was behind Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah.
If you like Brett Favre sat for a little bit until he wasn't even drafted by Green Bay. He played for the Falcons. He got up there. Aaron Rodgers is the most notable because they drafted him out of Cal. We knew he was a good quarterback, but he was able to just develop.
Yeah.
No pressure on him. Just learn. These guys are having to learn and do at the same time. And it can be unfair to a lot of young quarterbacks, man, and they can go out the league a lot faster than they should just based off that expectation in the crowd. Zappy's a good one where Zappy plays 2 good games. Now the crowd's ready to just fire on Mac Jones at any second. Then you got Bill Belichick got caught up in it. And then now Mac Jones is back to starting, which means you shouldn't have pulled Mac Jones out of the Bears game.
Right.
Right. In hindsight, it was a mistake, but we called it a mistake here. Like, you shouldn't have. You can't do that. You can't just give your starting quarterback a half of football. You give him the whole game because that's what he deserves.
Yep.
Because it's not his fault he got injured. You give him that whole game, and then you sit him down and you give him the old Sirianni. We're good. We're good. We're going to go ahead and go with the Zappy guy and see what we get out of that. But the crowd is constantly putting the pressure on. So you're actually playing. If I'm Mac Jones, excuse me, a little bit of a tangent. If I'm Mac Jones and I show up to my home stadium and I look around the crowd and there are more people rooting for the guy behind me than me, that affects me. How can that not affect me? And that goes back to when I was saying that the Eagles fans were playing defense on Jalen Hurts by just with the Minshew stuff all the time. It's like, yo, man, even though I'm sure he wasn't really worried about him, but it was still just like when you look around, you go, man, are you guys even rooting for me? The Patriots fans came out Monday night and didn't even root for Mac Jones. Mm-hmm. They waited him to make a mistake and started chanting Zappy's name immediately. And then Zappy came in, had those 2 touchdowns, and the roof damn near came off, and they lost the game. They were back to square one because you can't fall into the hype, man. What New England fans won't take credit for is playing defense against Mac Jones. This guy was out there like, he was really pressing. You can see him press. I got to make a play. Because this guy, they have signs and all over the arena for this guy that's not even playing. I'm playing. Root for me while I'm playing. And when I'm not, then root for the other guy. But don't root for the other guy while I'm playing, because you're playing defense against me, man. So, yeah, man, that was just my little tangent on just quarterbacks and how they need to develop and give them time, microwave society, and your favorite quarterbacks at the bench his first year.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you guys know that. Even Michael Vick himself, as amazing as he was coming out of Virginia Tech. What was it, like Schwerber? What was his name out there? What was that guy? Matt Schwab.
Yeah.
Matt Schwab, he still sat the bench.
Yeah.
to Matt Schwab, the most explosive, elusive player we had ever seen in like college football history, Michael Vick at Virginia Tech. If
That's
you
the
were
thing.
there, and he
That's the
still sat
thing.
the bench.
That was the recipe. That was the way it was done. And then you get a flash of success of one that actually does it.
Right.
And then everybody is like, oh, if we just draft a quarterback number one, everything is fixed. And then they do that with a guy like Burrow and nearly get him killed behind a makeshift offensive line because they put everything on the number one pick and they didn't build an offensive line around him. Now, luckily, the Bengals have made strides to go out and get Jamar Chase to build a line around him and do things. But it doesn't happen overnight. Burrow did not do well his first. He got killed, ended up getting killed and got put out. And then, then he comes back and goes to the AFC Championship game. So, yeah, you're right. The whole point I was making about that was that it was just crazy to me that Fields is now on the rise in fantasy, and all due to the fact that after they traded away some players, and the Bears have kind of looked like, okay, we're out of it. It's going to be the Vikings. They didn't even. I don't think they even had a shot at a wild card.
Right.
But it worked out that way. So we're just about out of here, but we do have one more fantasy question from Caden, the Colts fan.
Oh, my bad, Caden. I was on a tangent. I didn't even see your question. Oh, it just popped
in.
Okay. I was on a bit of a tangent, man, because I was like, man, they need to leave because I'm tired of the bullying of the quarterbacks. But let's go. We'll be good.
I hear you. So, Caden, the Colts fan, tough times right now, but I know that we loved Frank Reich when he was a Eagles assistant. Things didn't work out. I know he had like 7 quarterbacks underneath him. But you got Jeff Saturday now for now. You got some rebuilding to do for the Colts, but your fantasy team's still in it apparently, and you've got a trade. Are you looking? Which end of this trade are you on? Would you trade CD? Are you going to trade CD, Godwin, and Keenan for AGB? And that's what you're looking to get, AGB and Waddle.
Say, hey, Frank,
well, you got a reason to. You got a reason.
Yeah, it depends on.
We loved him. He was the offensive coordinator.
Right.
During the Super Bowl.
Depends on which side of this trade that you're on, like Lee said, man. Well, I'll just talk about it regardless who's on one side. I would say this: if I'm but
he's trading CD, Godwin, and Keenan.
CD, Godwin, and Keenan. Man, where are you sitting at in your league?
Yeah,
Let me like I'm a finance. Tell me about your what's your record right now? Like, how much of a risk do you need to take? Because if I get AJ Brown and Waddle, my goodness, because these are teams that are going to be playing for a while. You got Henry and Dalvin, 5-4. You have Henry and Dalvin. And let me go back to the original question real quick. And your quarterback is Tua. Oh, man, that Tua Waddle is going to be a good connection. You know what, man? But see, here's the thing. You have CeeDee Lamb, Godwin, and Keenan. Godwin is out there on
Tampa Bay.
He's still with Tampa.
Yeah, he's still with Tampa, and he's middle of the road.
Man, if Keenan Allen comes back, he's going to be that guy along with CeeDee Lamb. But I think pound for pound,
he's got Hopkins as well. I mean,
oh man, I think I'm just going to. If I was you, man, I would just go AJ Brown and Waddle.
Yep, I agree.
If you can pick up Waddle and AJ Brown with that Tua combo, man, a good week is going to be a great week for you because AJ is still going to demand points.
With what you've got right now, Caden, this is just like icing on the cake. If you add these two guys with what your team has right now, AJ Brown, you know what he can do. As Eagles fans, we tell you right now, we know what he does week in and week out. The guy's on pace for 1,600 yards right now, as it stands. And Waddle, even though he plays second fiddle to Tyreek Hill, he comes up with some of the most explosive plays that the Dolphins have in their arsenal. He's definitely just behind Tyreek in those. So CD is tough to give up. But I actually prefer what AJ Brown would do over CD right now. So, and I think it would be worth it.
I'm right there with you, man. I think
it's
because Keenan Allen has been hurt. If Keenan Allen has not been hurt, I would say just stick with what you have, keep you flexible. You had a 5-4 schedule, so when you take some bye weeks, you're going to need some dogs back there to kind of back it up. But if you can have AJ Brown, Waddle, and Hopkins,
Yeah,
Man,
and
that's
then
a scary
Henry
sight.
and Tua, yeah.
Henry, Dalvin, and Tua. That's
You're-
a scary sight. That's a
Yeah.
scary sight, man. I think you can win with either, but I think you can have some really explosive weeks with AJ Brown and Waddle.
That's an assortment of riches. I'm envious of you, my man.
Right.
So that's it from us. Unless anybody comes in with one more question, we are going to head out. So do want to mention tomorrow night, the Eagles we're going to cover the Eagles. They're playing the Washington Commanders. Every time I go to say Washington, the R word always immediately wants to come out.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do still, but I'll get used to it after a while. But they are playing the Commanders, and we are going to preview that game tomorrow night at 7:00 Eastern here on the Where Eagles Dare podcast with Lee and Tubby. Looks to be another good great game. We're excited for it. We've got a potential to go 9-0, but we'll see, and we'll cover all that stuff tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on the live stream. We enjoyed talking to each and every one of you and talking to you about your fantasy questions. We are going to be doing a fantasy podcast at least once or twice a week the rest of the season through the playoffs to help you guys out, because we're fellow fantasy football players, and we love just the interaction is much better than you get somewhere else. So even though we're Eagles podcast, we're here for everyone. But thank you for joining us on whether it's Facebook Live, YouTube, or Twitch. Tell your friends about it. Let other people know so that we can get other people subscribed and have a really good forum going on. You can also email us your questions in advance. You can email them to our email address is lee.bird, that's BYRD on the screen, .eaglesdare@gmail.com. So back again tomorrow, 7 to talk about the Commanders game for Monday night with the Eagles. But that's it for this week. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for Tubby for his final words of the night.
Thanks for stopping by the Where Eagles Dare podcast to see Lord Vader himself continuing to strive in our league, man. But yeah, man, come on back tomorrow night for the Washington Eagles preview. That said, man, as always, fly, Eagles, fly.
And go Birds. We will see you all tomorrow night, guys.